Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Greg Talks. I am your host, Greg, and this is my co-host.
Eren.
And today we will be talking about social stability. This will be part 3 out of 4 on our stability mini-series that we're doing for the past month and a half or so. And Eren, I'll let you start us off.
All right, so with social stability, the first thing that comes to mind are the types of relationships. So we'll be talking about 3 of them in this podcast. One of them are familial relationships. The second one is like a co-worker type of deal. And the third one is friendships. And with friendships, they are a little bit more broad in a way, because with family we have like our internal family, then there's our external family. With work, there's just our superiors and then our co-workers. But with friends, you can have different groups of friends. You have your in group, you have your out groups, and then you have groups for specific things. And some of these groups can tie in with your family or your work. So when we think about this, it's important to specify what types of groups that you're going for, and then making sure that you know exactly how to speak with them as well. So Greg, are there some things that you do to keep your familial relationships close?
Yeah, so for example, me and my mother, what we do a lot of times to help with bonding is obviously we'll go like shopping together, we'll watch movies at home, and it actually does help when I watch a movie that she wants to watch typically, because that just makes her feel good that I'm interested in something that she likes. But also just like cleaning up around the house and doing just the normal day-to-day things to make things a little easier on her definitely helps with the bond, strengthening the bond between us. Me and my brother, what we used to do is we used to play games together. Unfortunately, that is not something that we do anymore. But nowadays, what we'll do to bond is like we'll have these conversations out of nowhere. And also keep in mind, like my brother is like 3.5 years younger than me. But we'll get into these like deep conversations about like games coming out or consoles or just like, you know, how he's doing in school. Because we went to the same school, and it's just kind of like something that I can speak on as an alumnus, but also as a college student in regards to what he's going through in high school. So those are just some things I do connect with my brother. And then as far as my dad goes, I just watch movies. That's about it. Eren, how about you? How do you connect with your family?
Well, over in mine, it's just my dad and I. And occasionally my younger siblings will come over too. So when I'm doing work, because I work from home and then I work on campus too. So when I'm doing things, I usually go into the room that my dad works in, and I just sit on the couch and he sits at his desk, and then we just work in silence. But it doesn't feel like one of those awkward silences. It's just natural. And then sometimes when he gets frustrated or I get frustrated with something and we start talking to ourselves, then the other person feeds back into that conversation, and then it just keeps rolling and rolling. And you feel like you're not alone, but at the same time, you're building that relationship with another person. Okay. But with my younger siblings, like you've been doing with your younger brother, I always ask them, like, how are you guys doing? If there's anything interesting going on with your lives, like stuff like that. Because it's always interesting just to see what the younger generation is getting up to. And sometimes you just gotta laugh, right? Because you can relate to some of them. And other things, you just have to shake your head because they're just crazy, you know? But then that brings us to the second type of relationship, which is like a co-worker type of relationship. I know that most people aren't as tight as others are with their coworkers, but in my eyes, I feel like it's a really important thing to do, to just be cordial. Always say like the morning or the afternoon greetings, you know, like, hey, how are you doing? What's up? Or if you're speaking to a superior, make sure that you're always friendly and you're smiling, unless you're one of those people that you're just going on with the flow, you know? And maybe you're a very sarcastic person, or maybe you're like one of those people that just have a comeback to anything. You know, just try to be yourself and try to put your best foot forward. Greg, I know that you have a work relationship-ish right now, right? With your Peace Corps thing and everything like that?
At the Peace Corps.
Hmm.
Um,
So, are there any things that you try to do just to keep communication open with your group?
yeah. It has been a little tough because like the only times we do get to talk are when we are on our weekly, or not weekly, but our daily calls on Zoom. So what we usually do is, I mean, when we get into the breakout groups that we do, I just kind of ask them how their day is going. Though I ask them like, what are some things that they've been doing like at home to keep busy when they're like not doing work related to AmeriCorps, just to kind of like see how they're doing and to check up on them from time to time. Uh, but I know like in other jobs I've had, like when I worked at uh, Planet Fitness or even at DTE in the past. What I would do kind of like the same thing. I would just kind of like every morning just like go around the office or around the front desk and like have these like chats with them, but they never would really last long. I would typically keep it short because I'm not going to see them once I leave the building. So
Yeah.
I always try to like kind of set my boundaries with the people I work with um, normally. But that's typically how I like keep things healthy and moving with my work friends.
Mhm. And I think it's really good that you said that part about boundaries
Mm-hmm.
because that's a good lead in into our next topic, which is friendships. And
Mm-hmm.
as I've stated previously, there are so many different types of friendships, and there are different groups for different friendships as well, right?
Right.
So it's important to keep your boundaries set for these different groups. If you really want to be precise and you want to be honest and open with them, especially with your in groups, for example, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then you have a little bit less of a boundary than you do if you're talking to like an external group, you know?
Yeah.
And I know most of you out there know what I'm talking about when I say that you don't put your business out in the street unless you're ready for it to become public knowledge.
Right.
And it's really important when you're communicating with different people to recognize whether or not that person has your back and if you have that person's back. Because chances are, if it's not mutual, then there's a reason for that. So,
Truth.
Greg, with your in group, or maybe with some of your out groups, what do you do to keep your communication flowing?
Now with my in groups, since I normally talk to them a lot more often than I do with my out groups, communication does tend to be quite healthy and smooth most of the time. I make sure like I contact like my in group every week or so, just to make sure that I don't go too long without checking up on them or seeing how I'm doing, or vice versa, them trying to see what I'm doing. But with my out group, normally what I'll do is I'll do follow up calls with them every so often. Not like follow up in business, but like follow up in terms of checking up on them to see how their family and how they're feeling, especially with everything going on. I have been doing that a lot more often. But what I do think is important when you're dealing with multiple friend groups is to be fine with losing connections with some in favor over the other. Because when you move throughout your life, you're going to meet lots of new people. It's going to be like a lot harder to, stay in contact with those that you've known since your childhood, because you're spending more time with people you know now, mainly. So I think it's very crucial that you're willing to let go of some friendships to make room for new and sometimes better ones. But Eren, how do you manage between your different circles of friends?
I try to keep them equally.
Mm,
So there isn't I'm an open book. You can tell exactly what I'm thinking based off my expression. Like I try to keep it very real with people. But there are some people that I feel closer to and that we've been through a lot more than others.
mm-hmm.
So with those people that I consider like my in group, then I text them a lot and I'm not afraid to call them. I know some people have a thing against calling or FaceTiming or video chatting in general, but I love talking to people. So
Mm-hmm.
even with my out group, I call them every once in a while. I say, hey, what's up? And we just get into like this long talk. and then I might not talk to them again for another week or so. And the cycle just repeats. But I make sure to always keep in close contact with them, even if it's like every other holiday or something like that. And then, similar to how you were saying earlier, Greg, I know when it's time to like cut a relationship, because sometimes the vibe just isn't there like it used to be in the past.
Right.
So I wish them good luck. I say, if they ever need any help or would like to talk to anybody, then I'm always willing to lend an ear. But I make sure that I'm available for them so that they're not feeling alone. And at that same token, you're not necessarily like cutting a bond, you're just letting it fade out. And that's all there is to it.
Yeah. You don't break bonds, just let them move on naturally.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. But speaking of like friendships, I think in addition to that, it's also just as important to make sure that you're spending time around people who have similar values to you. The reason I say this is because if you spend time around friends who do things that aren't necessarily the most positive types of actions, it can start to have a negative influence on you in a way that you don't like, and it also stifle your personal growth, which is why being around people who promote more positivity helps you with whatever you're doing, though, because it's like a motivator. Negative people tend to bring you down, and they bring you down to a dark place. Yeah. So, Aaron, do you have any like experience, or like speaking more towards like having friends that are similar to you or just have the same values?
I'd like to say that all the people that I consider to be my friends have some aspect that are similar to what I like to do or what I value. So I know a lot of my friend group, my in group, like anime, and they also like communicating, right? So I like to communicate. I like anime a lot. I love anime. And we're able to just vibe on that topic. But we're also able to vibe on different topics because everybody's different.
Mm-hmm.
I can't say that I've ever met somebody like me, like somebody that's very like open, very just very me.
Mm-hmm.
But I've met people from all different types of life. Some people that have history, some people that have more sassiness than I do. And it's so cool just getting to talk with them and being able to just have a diverse group of people that have different thoughts about life, even if their opinions differ from yours. And it's just cool because you're getting a whole walk around from the world almost.
Exactly. But moving on, this isn't going to be like a rant or anything, though, but I do want to kind of address the issue between calling versus texting argument. And it's not to say that one is better than the other. It's just that I think I've come to a point in my life where I'm starting to, I guess, question why we like to text so much and why it's so difficult to get into the mindset of calling people. And I've come to the conclusion, I think it's because people don't want to be vulnerable with another person as much as they would have been, say, before smartphones came into the picture. I don't know if it's because it's like it's ingrained in us to continually text people and not want to communicate on a deeper and emotional level, or if it's because of fear. Honestly, I think it's because of fear. Me personally, I was and have been a texter since I got a smartphone, and over the years, what I found is, and a lot of you might find this trivial because it has been said time and time again, that it's hard to read a person's emotions and feelings through words on a screen or just characters. Um, and I'm thinking to myself, well, why don't I just call this person so I can kind of get across what I need to say a lot quicker, and they can kind of understand based on the tone of my voice, like the urgency, I need the information, or the emotion in it. So yeah, I just want to mention that because I do think we should strive to call people more, especially now in this current day and age, because there are a lot of people that are just right now, like there are a lot of you out there that when you go back to school, you might, because you haven't seen people in a while, or you just haven't been talking to like counselors and things like that, you might not be in the most positive space though. So I think it's important that people practice connecting with others through their voices more. But Aaron, did you you have anything like to
Mhm.
add on like the texting or calling argument?
I know we had this conversation a little bit earlier,
Mm-hmm.
but similar to what you were saying, right? Calling makes a person a little bit more vulnerable to the other person. So maybe if your relationship isn't like that close, calling can either strengthen it or it could weaken it. And I feel like a lot of people just aren't used to being that familiar with somebody or being that emotional with somebody. Because when you talk on the phone, you leave your hands open to do whatever. You're thinking about not only what the other person is saying, but also how you're going to react. And I feel like that's the part, that last statement is what people don't really know how to like avoid, because everybody is comparing themselves to something or somebody, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when you're doing things, it's always like, what's this person going to think? Or if I say this, then maybe I can say this. Or maybe like my tone is just a little bit high, or I'm saying like too much, you know? So
Mm-hmm.
things like that just constantly go off and they're always being thought of. But I think what's really important to realize about calls is that you're not being recorded. It's not for a grade, and everybody is judging everybody, but nobody really cares, you know? So to me, at least, that's why I like calling people almost, because there's just something vulnerable about showing your tone or hearing another person and being real with both of us. Because when you text, right? When you said how things are just characters, there's only so much an emoji can do. I'm a very emotive texter. So I will use emoji, I'll use GIFs, I'll use
Mm-hmm.
whatever the heck is in my arsenal to make my messages seem a little bit more lively. But there are some people that have text slang, so you know you instead of you or you are instead of
Mm-hmm.
your. And that gives off a little sense of emotion. It's their own little quirk, but you don't really get the vibes as you do if you're calling somebody.
True.
So
And
that's
mm-hmm.
one of my values is like honesty is the best policy. So the most honest and most vulnerable thing to do when you're talking with somebody is to be able to just talk with them, like be straight up. And either video chats or calling is like the best method of doing that. But on the same token, there are lots of people that I know that feel way more comfortable with texting because all they are words on a page that you try to put as much emotion into so the other person gets it. But at the same time, you're not in jeopardy of breaking an image by like crying over the phone or having little sniffles. Texting is just convenient and it's there and it's the one that we're most used to. So we're going to utilize it to the best of our ability.
True. And I don't want to like slander that point because I do think as a convenient tool. I'm glad that it is there because we can't always get the phone. I think what we need to realize is we shouldn't let it become how we communicate, period. And that's where I
Can you
think
elaborate on that just a little bit?
so what I mean by that is I don't think we should allow it to become an addiction, basically. Like when we create relationships with people, and after a while, if we've been texting this person, I think at a certain point it should gravitate to calling. It shouldn't stay texting forever, is what I'm saying, when you're not around, I think. So it's not like, you shouldn't call right away, but I think in order to advance the relationship, if you're not meeting in person, I think shooting, that person a call wouldn't hurt, so they can hear voice, so you
Yeah,
can,
having like a little spice of life type of flavor to it.
yeah, kind of something like that. But that's kind of all I'm going to say on like the calling and texting thing. If you guys want to argue with me about that in the comments, feel free, if you want to indulge that. Um, but speaking on other forms of communication, like, I mean, if you guys are feeling lonely or, you know, not super well, I mean, there are things like chat rooms and video chat because that's probably like the closest thing we have to
interpersonal contact right now. So those can be definitely like a positive way you can like also connect people after Discord, Instagram, Snapchat, whatever you use to communicate with people. Even Amino, kind of when I'm on most of the time, chat room, speaking with people about or another hobby that you might like. It can lift your spirits to have other people there to speak with, especially when you're bored in your house and not really seeing or talking to a lot of people at once. But Eren, if you don't have anything else to add, I think that just about wraps things up. In a week, we will be doing our final episode, which will be on spiritual stability. And we'll actually have a few guests come in to help further that conversation. So look forward to that. Do not forget to smash that subscribe button. This video, if you would, it goes a long way to help us out. And also, like I said, comment down below. I would love to hear some of your thoughts on ways to better your own social media or other tips about you have for others. Make sure you follow our Instagram page at Greg Talks, that's GREGTALKZ. Once again, our YouTube channel is Greg Talks, that's GREGTALKZ. And with that, we will see you guys next week. Take care.